you take a notion to go astray and name this beautiful, great high school for the two of us. We appreciate it most highly. We are grateful to you for it. We are grateful to those who thought about doing it. And it was a wonderful thing. As I say, I've had a great many honors, but none that equals this. And education is free in this country. And if you don't want to get an education, don't live in this country, because we've got laws now which to force you to take an education whether you want it or not, and it's the best thing that ever happened to you. The more you know, the better off you are in public service and everywhere else. And those things that you get into your head, no one can take away from you, no matter what it is. It's better than money, it's better than profit, it's better than honors. To have something in your head on which you can rely for the future. And I want every single one of you youngsters who are here to bear that in mind, because it'll do you good in the long run. The great government under which you live is the greatest government in the history of the world. I've made a study of government. I've had some reason to make a study of government. And I've found that there is not another government in the world that's equal to the United States of America. It's the greatest historical country in the history of the world, and it always will be as long as you youngsters do your duty. Get something in your head to live on the rest of your lives, and put it to work after you get a chance to do it. As I said before, there isn't a thing if you make up your minds to do it. There isn't any reason in the world why you can't be President of the United States, because this country is the one country in the world where the freedom of the public offices are in the hands of the electorate, which are the citizens of the country. Now, we have one teacher present here tonight, to whom Ms. Truman and I, this afternoon I should say, to whom Ms. Truman and I went to school, Mrs. W.L.C. Palmer. Where is she? Will she stand up? She's in the audience somewhere. All the rest of them have passed on. But Mrs. Palmer was one whom we'll never forget. She was about 16 or 17 years old when Ms. Truman and I went to school to her, and that's been about 63 years ago, so you do your own figuring. We graduated in 1901, and the presiding officer was very diplomatic. He didn't state the date when we graduated from this high school. We graduated from the Independence High School it was then, and was IHS on all the papers that we got. But
following is a statement of the attending physician. While getting into the bathtub, Mr. Truman slipped on the bath mat and fell forward to his right side. He sustained a severe laceration over the right eye. His eyeglasses were broken in the fall, and several pieces of glass made multiple lacerations on the right eyelid. The former president also suffered multiple contusions about the right eyebrow and forehead. In falling, he struck his chest on the side of the tub, fracturing 2 ribs. His condition is satisfactory, and he's resting easily. His stay at the hospital is indefinite at this time, as he has been due for his regular 6-month checkup for some time.
I had just left Mr. Truman at his home after taking him there from the library, and I had just driven in the driveway when my wife hollered for me to come to the telephone that the station wanted me. And I went in, and they had told her that Mr. Truman had fell at home. So I immediately called the Truman home and talked to the maid and said that she said that the president had fell in the bathtub, and that the officers were there and an ambulance, and they were going to take him to the hospital. I immediately called Dr. Graham and informed him that they were on the way to the hospital. And then I called Mrs. Truman, where she was playing bridge this afternoon, and told her that I would be by immediately to pick her up, and which I did, and brought her direct here to the hospital.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention? I know how you feel. I feel the same way. But we just have to move along here. I hate to stop that outpouring of affection for a great man who has that great combination of courage and wisdom. But we have to do it. That's all there is to it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thank you.
It was an interesting meeting, of course. He was the President of the United States, and the whole building, the whole library belongs to the history of the United States. So it was an interesting meeting.
I believe you talked some agriculture, didn't you?
Well, it depends what you mean by agriculture. Yes, we look at the corn he has on his table, so we ask where it come from. I hope that development relations between our two countries will go further and further and better. This is my really sincere hope, that we will have our relations develop in a right direction, in a good direction. And I hope this year 1965 will be the year of further improvement, relations between our countries, further enlargement, I should say, contacts and ties between our two great people.
I was very impressed with my meeting with children yesterday at the mayor's office. And I like them to be eager to know Russian language and to know Russia better through the language. And I was very impressed today with your National Gallery here in Kansas City, and I think they have very nice and very valuable pieces there of sculpture and paintings.
It depends how tight schedule they will have.
And
what end? Well, in general, of course, I would like to recommend, but it depends, as mentioned, how many days we'll have.
I see. And how have you found Kansas City? Have you
It's very
enjoyed your
interesting,
visit?
very interesting, yes. This is our first trip, my wife and myself, in the heart of America, as we put it, in geographical heart.
All right.
And this was very interesting for us, because we have been on the East Coast, West Coast, now in the middle.
Mr. Truman, did you have a nice trip?
Yes, always have a nice trip when I go to see my grandchildren.
How are they?
Oh, they're fine.
Can you tell us what you did during the holiday?
Nothing but have dinner once in a while with them, and they had dinner once in a while with me.
You didn't go out now and walk around the park or anything?
Well, I walked up and down the street just like I always do.
Didn't happen to take a side trip to Washington or anything?
No. I was in New York all the time.
Ah. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Mrs. Truman, how are the grandchildren?
Great. He asked you a question.
How are the grandchildren? Welcome back, sir.
It's a compliment to me, it's a compliment to my family, and I am of the opinion that it's a little late now for you to commence to figure on regretting it, because my next birthday I'll be 81 years old, and you'll have to do a lot of work between now and 100 if you're going to tear that reputation down that you've given me today. I appreciate it, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. You know, I would like very much to meet this fellow you've been talking about. I don't believe there is any such person, but you know how grateful I am that you all feel the way you do about the situation. It's evident of the fact that you love us and that you have appreciated what has endeavored to have been done for this community. I am just as happy as I can be that you feel that way.
I'm honored to be here today at the presentation of my portrait of President John F. Kennedy to the Truman Library. And not the least of my honors is that my portrait will be hanging under the same roof as Tom Benton's magnificent mural, which is, in my opinion, his masterpiece. I hope that after a while, President Truman will get used to my portrait. I'm afraid it may take a bit of getting used to.
And I want to thank all of you for coming to get a viewpoint of one portrait that was painted of a president from life. There are very few and far between. There are not very many of them. We have started here an institution, we hope, that will be devoted to a great extent to the history and the operations of the presidents of the United States from the beginning down to date. And this is one performance in connection with that situation.
Mr. President, you kicked up quite a fuss with your remarks about Martin Luther King.
He had it coming.
Would you repeat it again?
I will not.
Mr. President, after all of the praise that you've heard about yourself the last few days, are you ready yet to accept the role of the beloved elder statesman that you've spurned for so long?
I'm not. I'm still young enough to stay a younger statesman. What's the matter?
Excuse me, in your speech last night, your acceptance speech of the award, you made the statement that a lot of the countries, both new and old, are not seeming to go right in this world. They've not learned by their mistakes. Can you enlarge on that?
No. I'm not ready to make you a speech right here. I want to go home.
Mr. President, you notice any difference in the attitude towards civil rights in the East and here?
No.
Not at all?
No, it's the same all over the country.
What's your opinion of the civil rights leaders in Kansas City? You made some statements about the civil rights leaders in the nation.
Civil rights leaders are doing the best they can to meet the situation. It's the contrary damn fools that won't obey them that cause the trouble.
What about the Ku Klux Klan, sir? We understand they made
Ku Klux Klan is no good. Never was any good, and I've been fighting them for, well, I guess I've been fighting them for 60 years.
I think they ought to be legislated out of business.
I don't care what they do with them, as long as they take their hoods off and keep them from wearing them.
Life by some Klan members?
No, I've had it done before, young man.
Mr. President, do any of those three grandsons look like you yet?
Oh, they're not old enough to look like anybody.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Mr. Farley, what do you think will be history's final assessment of President Truman?
Well, I think he'll go down in history as one of our greatest presidents. In my mind, he'll be included in the first 5 great presidents that our country has had. During his term as president, he was confronted with serious problems. He took over after President Roosevelt's death. He made 10 or 12 important decisions. He made them decisively and with great courage. I think he's highly regarded by all Americans, and they certainly have the same regard and affection for him in Western Europe. And and through Central and South America.
Charlie, how do you, as an old, long-time Democratic National Chairman, personally rate Mr. Truman as a politician?
Well, he was as fine a politician as I ever came in contact with. And I think to be accused of being credited with being a politician, in my judgment, is better than being credited as being a statesman. A statesman is more or less a dead politician. People of this country don't, in my judgment, politics at times gets the wrong connotation. And people in politics are accused unfairly and unjustly. If it wasn't for politicians in this country, and good politicians who have the best interests of their community and their state and their country at heart, we wouldn't have as many fine laws on the statute books as we have at the present time.
Mr. Farley, President Truman, as I'm sure you well know, still insists that he is not ready to become an elder statesman, and I gather you feel he should not relent in that.
No, I think it would be silly for him to ever think of doing like that. While he's around, and I sincerely hope and pray he'll be here for a long, long time, the American people will be anxious to hear his views, which they get from him very frankly.